What? I can win a cruise for 4 with Digicel?
Yes. Simply upgrade to a 7 or 30-day Prime Ultra bundle, join the most festive LTE network, pay your bill in full and on time, or sign up for the postpaid or home internet for your chance to win. Win an iPhone 15, smart TVs, cash, and more. Enjoy Santa's new sleigh. It's a family cruise aboard MSC Divina from Miami. Visit a Digicel store or dial *141# to activate a bundle today. Digicel, better together this Christmas.
Dashing through potholes with your Maximo battery and your little trees. Think how happy you could be at Automotive Art, your favorite place to start. Come and shop this Christmas season and just keep us in your heart. Oh, Automotive Art. Automotive Art's your favorite place to start. With our great tires and car care, you'll keep us in your heart. Automotive Art's your favorite place to start. With paints and oils and carpets too, you'll keep us in your heart.
This segment is sponsored by Casada Paints and Supplies Incorporated, the official distributors of Sherwin-Williams Paints.
17 minutes after 7 o'clock in Antigua, Barbuda. This is your wake-up call presented by Twin Island Media on 94.1 FM. We're also streaming on Facebook Live, TuneIn, Simple Radio, and a number of other apps that are available on your preferred devices. Our attention remains on the Essequibo region in Guyana and the dispute between Venezuela and that country over the region. Joining us now is the Honorable Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament, Leader of the Opposition in Guyana. I want to say a special welcome to Wake Up Call. I believe we would have had an interview or two in another space, Mr. Norton, but we're certainly happy to have you here on Twin Island Media. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks for having me, and a very good morning to the entire Antigua Barbuda, including and especially to the Guyanese residing there. I know there's a large Guyanese population in Antigua.
Yes, indeed. And to that, we all collectively say amen. Whenever we have a sporting event between, let's say, Antigua and Guyana, we joke and say there are two home teams that play on the field. Well, usually football or something along that line. So
understandable.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, is the opposition, let's get straight to it, in agreement with the government when it comes to how Guyana has been handling this matter?
We are in agreement with the government that we have to reject Venezuela's approach. We do not believe the government is handling it the best way it could. But as Guyanese, we have to be united against Venezuela. And this is so because from the inception, it was Venezuela who wanted a settlement of the issue. They pushed the British to the United States in the 19th century. And in 1899, there was an arbitral award that settled this matter. And therefore, we all accept that this territory belongs to Guyana. One of the problems I have with the government is that they are not taking a national approach to this issue. It's kind of selective consultation rather than a structured approach. And that is one of the problems I have with the government's approach. However, as Guyanese, our most immediate objective is to ensure that there is peace at our border and we return to good neighborliness and peaceful coexistence so that we all can progress.
Okay. What's your assessment of how Guyana's handled this issue? Well, you've essentially answered that question, but in terms of the impact of how Guyana has handled this particular matter, it doesn't seem to have resolved the issue. Venezuela's approach appears to be becoming more and more aggressive toward the People's Cooperative Republic.
Venezuela, I think with the advent of oil in Guyana, Venezuela has developed new designs on Guyana, especially the Essequibo, which is very rich in resources. The government, I think, began very late to mobilize the international support we need to keep Venezuela at bay. And so we find ourselves in a position where work is now being done to mobilize the international community to serve as a deterrent to Venezuela behavior. I believe that if much was done earlier in a more structured way, Guyana would have been in a much better position. But having said that, support for Guyana is emerging from all quarters, CARICOM, the United States, the United Kingdom, etc. And that is what is needed at this stage. I also believe that much more work needs to be done to ensure that the foreign ministry is rebuilt, and it must have a clear outline approach, a clearly outlined approach to this Venezuela issue. We cannot continue to, when Venezuela act up, then we respond. We have to be consistent. For instance, as you check what is happening, you recognize a lot of people do not know about the arbitral award of 1899. Ghana should have been in the forefront of putting this information out in newspapers in the Caribbean and Latin America. I've consistently said in the parliament, with the advent of oil, Guyana needs an international dimension to oil, meaning a foreign policy of oil. You have Petrocaribe, which is being used in some regard to attract some Caribbean states away from us. We should now be assuming the role of a leader in the Caribbean, using our oil resources as part of our economic diplomacy to achieve our objectives, especially in terms of ensuring our solid Caribbean support does not shift in the direction of Venezuela. All countries have their interests, and it is the task of us as a country to look at those interests, identify them, and develop ways and means of ensuring that there's a confluence of interests between those countries' interests and our interests. And I believe the government has failed to develop a foreign policy of oil that will allow us to keep Venezuela at bay and promote our cause. For instance, a lot of people seem not to know that Guyana, in the arbitral award of 1899, Guyana lost territory to Venezuela, the entire Orinoco Basin, and that Venezuela celebrated its victory in 1899. And then it sat with us and did the boundary in the 1905 Boundary Commission. And then in 1931, they established a tri-junction point between Guyana, Venezuela, and Brazil. All of this information needs to be out there. I've criticized the government for not having a proactive public relations program. Also, it should be known all around the world that this issue, having been settled in 1899, re-emerged based on a spurious claim by a junior lawyer in the team that there was a deal between the United States, Britain, and the United Kingdom to deprive Venezuela of land. No, they haven't accepted it for 63 years. In 1962, then decided that they were going to challenge it. Now, in the same award, Brazil got territory from Venezuela. Until this day, Brazil has never ever challenged, Venezuela has never ever challenged Brazil on the land it would have lost as a result of the same deal. We should be pointing out how there is a deal that went awry, and you are going after Guyana, but you are not going after Brazil. It is greed, it is bullyism. Now, the other important point to be made here is that in 1966, when the British, in consultation with the Guyana government, agreed to the Geneva Agreement, it was clear that Venezuela had to produce evidence in support of what is clearly a spurious claim. Up until this day, Venezuela has not produced one iota of evidence that there was any deal. All they continue to do is to be aggressive and seek to push Guyana in the direction of dialogue between Venezuela and Guyana. We're saying at this stage, there could be dialogue on peace, there could be dialogue on bilateral relationships. But as it relates to the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, it is properly before the International Court of Justice, and it should be settled by the International Court of Justice.
Right. I want to ask you, before we go to a break where we share some messages from our partners, what do you expect to come out of the meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines hosted by Dr. Ralph Gonzalez on Thursday?
First of all, I thought from the inception that the approach was wrong. If you're doing proper foreign policy, you first put your senior officials to discuss. When your senior officials arrive at some kind of agreement, you put your foreign minister involved in more discussions. So by the time the heads would have met, you would have already discussed, analyzed, and moving in the direction of agreement. What I see here is two leaders turning up, and both are likely to be dissatisfied. My hope, however, is that at minimum, something in the direction of ensuring peace emerges. But like Sir Sridhar Ramphal said, I wouldn't be too over enthusiastic about this summit.
All right. It's now.
In fact, I won't be enthusiastic at all.
Oh dear. So it sounds like you have low expectations.
Yes, extremely low. Like I said, foreign policy is a process, not necessarily an event. And even when the event comes, it has to come as a result of a proper process that would have had a lot of discussions and analysis, and you narrow the gap between the two contending parties with the aim of achieving your objective. Right. That hasn't happened.
And largely, folks, diplomatic experts, professionals, they will tell you you're correct in terms of preparatory meetings with levels of officials within the structures of both government need to meet so that the meeting is a productive one. But Dr. Ralph Gonzalez might have taken the position, and his perspective might have been, look, time is of the essence. This thing is escalating very quickly. So let's just go to the head. What do you think about that approach?
Well, like I said before, we are open to dialogue. We believe, I said in Parliament when we debated the motion, that Guyana cannot close the door to dialogue. We can dialogue on this question of peace. We could dialogue at the bilateral level, education, health, etc. But as it relates to the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, it is properly before the International Court of Justice, and it should be dealt with there. In the circumstance, I have no problem with whatever initiative Prime Minister Gonzalez takes once it isn't focusing on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial issue, and it doesn't seek to engage in dialogue on this issue. That is what Venezuela wants, and that is not in Guyana's interest.
Right, we'll certainly watch this space. It's now 29 minutes after 7 o'clock in Antigua and Barbuda and also in the People's Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And we're going to have a few messages and continue with the leader of the opposition in Guyana, the Honorable Aubrey Norton.
This segment is sponsored by Casada Paints and Supplies Incorporated, the official distributors of Sherwin-Williams Paints.
'Tis the season to let your home sparkle with the magic of colors from Casada Paints and Supplies, official distributor of Sherwin-Williams Paints, unwrapping amazing deals just for you. It's a Sherwin-Williams Christmas. December 8 and 9, celebrate VC Birthday with a free gallon promotion. Buy 5 gallons of Sherwin-Williams Property Solution, get 1 gallon free, while enjoying a fantastic 15% off on all other products. But wait, there's more. All ABST relief days, December 15 to 22nd, join us for Sherwin-Williams 10 plus 10. Revel in a 10% discount matching the government month's ABST offers. Plus, December 18 to 23, enjoy 15% off non-ABST days. Sherwin-Williams Christmas. They may duplicate our colors, can't replicate our quality. Casada Paints and Supplies, Utility Drive, Casada Gardens, 562-9450. It's a Sherwin-Williams Christmas at Casada Paints. Transforming homes, brightening holidays.
Tis the season to win prizes.
You're probably wondering what Digicel Plus has in store for Christmas. Well, one lucky customer will win 1 year's bills on us. Simply pay your bill in full, sign up, or upgrade your home internet package. Get your chance to win weekly prizes like MacBooks, smart TVs, Apple TVs, and enter to win the grand prize of a family cruise. Call or WhatsApp 736-4069 to sign up or visit us in stores today. Digicel Plus. Better connected this Christmas.
That's the crunch of Popcorners, the new and exciting snack brought to you by Outdoor World Distribution Division. Available in large and small bags and 5 tasty new flavors at your favorite grocery store. Follow us or like us on Instagram and Facebook at OW_snaps. Call or WhatsApp us at 734-2447 to place your orders.
This segment is sponsored by Casada Paints and Supplies Incorporated, the official distributors of Sherwin-Williams Paints.
Now 7:33 in Antigua Barbuda. This is your wake-up call presented by Twin Island Media. We're continuing our focus this morning on wake-up call with the dispute between Guyana and Venezuela. And at this time, we're having a conversation with the Honorable Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament. He's the leader of the opposition in Guyana. And I want to ask you about CARICOM. Do you feel that CARICOM countries are showing enough solidarity in this matter?
The sum of the parts and the whole are different. I would say CARICOM as an institution has been in support and continues to be in support and is showing solidarity. But when you disaggregate it, let us not forget that Venezuela is making overtures to Caribbean countries through Petro-Caribbean. One of my fundamental criticism of the government is the absence of a foreign policy on oil. Because what Ghana should have done is basically to analyze the situation, understand the complexities, and based on your analysis, then develop an approach to engage individual Caribbean countries to ensure that they are totally supportive and that you are giving the kind of support to them that will make Venezuela no longer a lucrative option. So I would say CARICOM as an institution have been in support and in solidarity, but the government has failed to do the kind of work that need to be done at the interstate level to ensure that we strengthen the solidarity way past the Caribbean community into where the states of the Caribbean individually and collectively are in support of us. So I would say that at the institutional level, yes, there was solidarity, but work needs to be done to ensure that at the individual state level, we develop the kind of policies that will cause them to tend toward us rather than Venezuela.
How are the citizens in Guyana reacting to these developments? I mean, we've been following it. I know a number of my friends have been paying very close attention to the developments between both states. But on the ground in Guyana, what's your sense? I suppose it will be slightly nuanced given the fact that you're the leader of the opposition, but there you are. Go ahead.
Let me start with Essequibo, where I spent the last weekend. Mm-hmm. The people in Essequibo are unequivocal that this territory territory belongs to Guyana. They have no interest in being governed by Venezuela. And that has been made clear to me as I visited throughout the country. Of course, we are dealing with human beings, and they are concerned about the aggression of Venezuela at this time. It is for that reason I have advised them while I was there, and as I engage Guyanese, that we have to do the diplomatic work to ensure that Venezuela doesn't feel emboldened to come over our borders. I believe at this point, a good amount of work has been done, and I don't anticipate that Venezuela is going to cross our borders. But when you're dealing with the likes of Maduro, you must leave at least a 1 to 5% option that logic might not necessarily prevail. So what I would say to the Guyanese people is continue to educate yourself on the issue, ensure you are vigilant, but at the same time be calm. Because in this kind of conditions, if you aren't calm, some stupid act could occur that exacerbates the situation. And so in essence, I would say the Guyanese people have their concerns, but in the main, they want peace. And it is for that reason we supported dialogue with Venezuela to promote peace and to de-escalate the conflict, but not to become involved in discussion on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy, which we have indicated in clear terms that is properly before the International Court of Justice, and we should await the outcome of that, because that is where Guyana's interest lies.
But hasn't there been a determination at that level in favor of Guyana?
No. In the process, in 2018, we filed the documentation. Venezuela had challenged Court of Justice jurisdiction. The court ruled that they have jurisdiction. The two parties now need to present their position, and then the court determines the situation based on the merits of the case. That is where we are at this stage.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Now, what happens if Venezuela continues to escalate?
If Venezuela continues to escalate, and I don't anticipate, I prefer to be more optimistic than pessimistic, but we will have to continue to mobilize the international community against them and to do what is necessary to protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity. But I don't anticipate that they will escalate. In fact, in some regard, I believe our negotiators need to be skilled enough, because if they are skilled enough, they will recognize that Maduro wants to come down from this high horse that he has placed himself. And in these kinds of negotiations, you will have to facilitate him coming down without giving up anything key on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. Those who would have studied negotiations will know that countries have their positions, parties have their positions. You have to study those positions and work out what is it you need to do to ensure that you reduce the tension and restore peace and good neighborliness and peaceful coexistence at our borders.
Right. Our previous guest, Dr. David Hines, suggested that the government of Guyana was caught flat-footed on this issue. They should have anticipated it. From the time all this oil was discovered in the Essequibo region in particular, Venezuela was going to bring this up again. And it really was caught with its, proverbial pants down. You agree with that assessment?
Totally. In fact, I've continuously and consistently said in the parliament, we need a foreign policy to complement the fact that we have oil and would have discovered oil. So I do agree that the government was caught flat-footed. One of the problems this government has is that it is transactionalist. And when you're a transactionalist entity, you tend to focus on money and what you can benefit. And so you sometimes don't see the value of consistent, well-organized diplomatic efforts. And so I think in large measure, that is the problem the government faces. I think it is now coming to the realization that it has to have a strong public relations program. I've said in every capital, we can spend some money, especially in Latin America, to educate people, because a lot of people in Latin America and the Caribbean never heard of the Arbitral Award of 1899, never knew that Venezuela was supposed to provide evidence of a deal, which they have not. So I think not only have they been caught flat-footed, they have not developed a coherent approach to the issue, and that has resulted in putting us on our back foot at this stage. And I think now there's need for aggression, so that, and I'm using aggression here in the public relations sense, I don't want it to be misinterpreted to mean military aggression. We need to be aggressive in terms of our public education. We need to be aggressive in terms of our foreign policy if we are going to protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Have you had any conversations with Dr. Irfan Ali on this matter directly?
Yes, I did. Like I said in Parliament, by the time he spoke to me about this meeting, they had already agreed to the meeting. So it was a kind of a fait accompli. And it is in that context I had said to him, in fact, I was saying to him that I don't think we should meet at the level of heads, that we should meet, you should have office. It is then I was advised that there was already disagreement. And so it was a fait accompli. And it is in that context I suggested that the discussions could focus on peace and restoring tranquility, but it should avoid scrupulously any focus on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. And like I said in Parliament yesterday, if that becomes an issue and it is dealt with in that forum, then they cannot expect the opposition's support.
Interesting. Should Guyana rely on its relationship with the United States to further or to ensure its protection?
Guyana, as a country, cannot and should not rely on one country. It needs a coalition of people in support of Guyana. Brazil, for instance, is a critical player that we should focus on, because like I've said, I think Brazil has 9 countries on its borders. Only 2 countries in Latin America are not on Brazil's border. And therefore, for Brazil, borders should be sacrosanct. And that logically leads to the conclusion that your major ally in terms of geographical presence, geography, and foreign policy interests, Brazil will be critical. But I do not believe any country should base its foreign relations on one country. It has to have support across the board that allows it to build a coalition in support of Guyana's territorial integrity and sovereignty. The United States can be part of that. Britain can be part of that. Canada can be part of that. CARICOM is already a part of it. Brazil is critical. So I believe more in a coalition in support of Guyana rather than an over-focus on any one country. That is not to gainsay the fact that the United States has interest in Guyana, will protect that interest, and we have to search for the confluence of interests and pursue our interests based on that confluence.
You know, it's such a pity that we're almost out of time, but I need to ask you, the Caribbean has chosen to support Maduro despite the erosion of democracy under his leadership in Venezuela. Do you think that the stance of CARICOM states has come back to bite us?
Well, as far as I know, CARICOM supports us at present. On the question of support for Maduro, I do not know that CARICOM states support Maduro, though I know from a pragmatic standpoint, they're becoming involved in things like debt relief, Petro-Caribbean, which they see as their interest.
Well, given the impact of the United States' attempted interventions in the politics of Venezuela, CARICOM took a clear stance of support of, well, non-interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela, which by default is supporting Maduro.
I hear you. I don't necessarily agree with the logic. You can have relations with a country, economic and others, and as you pursue those interests, it doesn't follow that you necessarily support the system in place. And as you would recognize, the United States is pursuing its interests. And in the process, sanctions have been removed from Venezuela. What would you say in that circumstance? I would prefer to analyze it more in the context of countries' interests and to search for the confluence of interests rather than focusing a lot on the domestic politics of the country, because countries pursue their interests, and when the domestic situation suits them, they welcome it. If it doesn't suit them, but attacking it doesn't serve their interest, then they wouldn't attack. If attacking it serves the interest, then they will attack. One has to analyze the dynamics and sort it out so that you have your own position in relation to the overall issues. And so I wouldn't say that CARICOM supported Maduro. There were times when there were confluence of interests and they pursue those interests, and there are times when they aren't. It is our task, like I said before, to analyze this situation, deal with CARICOM, but in a very strategic way, target the Caribbean countries so that we can guarantee their support as we deal with this existential threat to Guyana.
I almost feel like it took me back to diplomacy class. Thank you very much, Honorable Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament, Leader of the Opposition in the People's Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, as the situation develops, we can invite you back to get your perspective on development.
Feel free anytime I'm disposed, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome, sir. We're past the time by 2 minutes for the second news top-up with Kieran Murdoch right after this.
Catch the news top-up with Kieran Murdoch. News